Jake Morrison stood at the large window of his office and watched the stars beyond Kepler Station. 3 years had passed since he first arrived at this place between worlds. The station floated in empty space far from any planet or sun. It belonged to no single species and served as neutral ground for all who came to trade or make peace. He wore his blue uniform with the Earth symbol on his shoulder. At 35 years old, Jake had earned respect from many alien species through his fair dealing and quick thinking. When problems arose at the station, he was often the one others turned to for help. His brown hair showed some gray now, and his green eyes had seen much in his time as humanity's voice in this corner of space. The door to his office made a soft sound. His assistant Peter walked in holding a data pad. Peter was young and eager to learn about diplomatic work. He had joined Jake's team 6 months ago and proved himself useful in many ways. "Captain, the Valkyrie ships are arriving now," Peter said. His voice carried excitement mixed with nervousness. Princess Zara's flagship just came out of hyperspace with 12 escort vessels. Jake nodded and turned from the window. The Valkyrie Empire controlled dozens of star systems and commanded respect through their advanced technology and powerful military. Their people had abilities that seemed almost magical to humans. They could speak directly into each other's minds and sense emotions from great distances. Most Valkyrie viewed other species as lesser beings fit only to serve their empire. "Have they requested docking permission yet?" Jake asked. "Yes, sir. They want the main diplomatic bay and 3 smaller bays for their support ships. They're also asking for enhanced security protocols and private meeting rooms." Jake walked to his desk and picked up his own datapad. The peace talks between the Valkyrie Empire and the Terran Alliance had taken months to arrange. Both sides wanted to avoid a war that would cost millions of lives. The Valkyrie had been expanding toward human space while humans had been building new colonies and systems the Valkyrie claimed as their own. Someone had to give ground or blood would flow. "Grant their requests," Jake said. "Make sure their quarters have the temperature and air mixture they prefer. I want no problems with basic needs." Peter made notes on his pad. "Sir, what do you know about Princess Zara herself?" Jake had studied the files on all the Valkyrie negotiators. Princess Zara was heir to the Valkyrie throne and daughter of Emperor Voss. She was young by Valkyrie standards at only 200 years old. Her people lived much longer than humans. The report said she was intelligent and well-educated but had never led negotiations before. Some human intelligence suggested she was more moderate than other members of the royal family. "She's untested in this kind of work," Jake said. "That could mean she's more willing to compromise, or it could mean she's trying to prove herself by being extra tough. We won't know until we meet her." The next few hours passed quickly as the station prepared for the arrival of both negotiating teams. The Valkyrie ships docked first. Their vessels were sleek and silver with strange curves that seemed to bend light around them. Jake watched from the observation deck as tall figures in flowing robes walked down the ramps from their ships. The Valkyrie were humanoid but taller than most humans. Their skin had a pale blue tint and their eyes were large and completely black. They moved with grace and seemed to glide rather than walk. Each one wore robes in different colors that Jake knew indicated their rank and role in their society. Princess Zara was easy to spot even from a distance. She wore deep purple robes trimmed with silver and walked at the center of her group. 6 guards in dark armor surrounded her at all times. Even with the distance between them, Jake could sense something different about her. She moved with purpose but also seemed to be studying everything around her with great interest. The human team had arrived earlier that morning. Admiral Susan Clark led the Terran Alliance delegation. She was a tough military leader who had fought in several border conflicts with alien raiders. Beside her walked Dr. Alan Ross, the chief diplomatic advisor, and 3 other specialists in trade, law, and military affairs. Jake's job was to serve as host and mediator. Kepler Station was human-built and operated, but it served all species equally. He would make sure both sides had what they needed and would step in if talks broke down completely. The formal welcome ceremony took place in the main conference hall. Jake stood at the podium wearing his dress uniform. Representatives from both sides sat at opposite ends of a long curved table. The room was large enough to hold 100 people but felt intimate with its warm lighting and earth-tone colors. "Welcome to Kepler Station," Jake began. "This place exists to serve peace between all peoples who travel the stars. Here you are guests and equals. Here you have the chance to build something better than war." Admiral Clark spoke first for the human side. She outlined the key issues that needed resolution, including territorial boundaries, mining rights, and trade agreements. Her words were direct and professional. She made it clear that humans wanted peace but would not surrender their rights to expand and grow. When Princess Zara rose to respond, Jake felt something shift in the room. Her voice was clear and musical when she spoke in perfect English. Most Valkyrie needed translation devices to communicate with humans, but she had clearly learned the language well. "The Valkyrie Empire seeks harmony among the stars," she said. "But harmony must respect the natural order. Some species are meant to lead while others follow. This is not cruelty, but wisdom learned over thousands of years." Her words carried the typical Valkyrie arrogance, but Jake noticed something else. Her eyes kept moving to him during her speech. When she mentioned natural order, her gaze lingered on his face as if looking for his reaction. Most Valkyrie barely acknowledged humans as worthy of attention, but Princess Zara seemed genuinely interested in what he might be thinking. After the formal speeches, both teams moved to separate areas for private discussions. Jake remained in the main hall to oversee the technical staff who were setting up recording equipment and translation systems for the detailed talks that would begin tomorrow. "Captain Morrison." Jake turned to find Princess Zara approaching him. Her guards had taken positions around the room but were giving her space to move freely. Up close, she was even more striking than he had expected. Her features were sharp and elegant, and her dark eyes seemed to hold depths he could not fathom. "Your Highness," Jake replied with a slight bow. "I hope your quarters are acceptable." "They are quite comfortable, thank you," she said. "I wanted to speak with you about the format for our discussions. I understand you will be moderating some sessions." "That's correct. My role is to help both sides communicate clearly and to suggest breaks or changes in approach when tensions rise." She nodded slowly. "I have studied human methods of negotiation. Your people seem to value compromise more than most species. Is this seen as strength or weakness in your culture?" The question was more personal and thoughtful than Jake had expected. "We see it as practical," he said. "When both sides give something up, both sides usually get something they need. Pure victory often leads to future conflicts." "Interesting," Princess Zara said. Her expression was hard to read, but Jake thought he saw genuine curiosity there. "Perhaps tomorrow we can explore these ideas further." She turned to leave, then paused and looked back at him. "Captain, I look forward to our discussions." As she walked away, surrounded by her guards, Jake wondered what lay behind her words. The next few weeks would determine whether peace was possible or if the galaxy would soon be consumed by war. But something about Princess Zara made him think there might be more to these talks than anyone expected. The first week of negotiations moved slowly as both sides tested each other's positions. Jake moderated 3 sessions each day while watching the careful dance of diplomacy unfold. Admiral Clark pushed hard for human expansion rights while Princess Zara defended Valkyrie territorial claims with logic and occasional flashes of steel in her voice. But Jake noticed something odd happening. During breaks, Princess Zara would find reasons to speak with him privately. She asked questions about human customs that seemed to go beyond simple diplomatic necessity. She wanted to know about Earth holidays, human art, and how families raised children. Her questions were detailed and showed real interest. On the 8th day, she approached him after a particularly tense morning session. The Valkyrie delegation had just rejected a human proposal for joint mining operations in disputed space. Admiral Clark had responded with barely controlled anger, and the meeting ended early. "Captain Morrison," Princess Zara said as other delegates filed out of the conference room, "might I request a private tour of the human quarters? I believe understanding your daily life could help me better comprehend your proposals." Jake hesitated. Private meetings between negotiators from opposite sides were not forbidden, but they were unusual. Of course, Your Highness. When would be convenient, now if possible. My afternoon is free, and I find myself curious about how humans organize their living spaces. Her guards followed at a distance as Jake led her through the human section of the station. He showed her the mess hall, where off-duty personnel played cards and shared meals. He explained the duty rotation system and how humans balanced work with recreation. Princess Zara listened carefully and asked many questions. You allow people to choose their own work schedules within limits, she said as they walked past the recreation area. The Valkyrie system assigns each person a role based on their abilities and birth position. Do you not find that freedom creates chaos? Sometimes, Jake admitted. But we've found that people work harder when they have some control over their lives. Happy workers are productive workers. They stopped at an observation lounge where several humans sat reading or talking quietly. Large windows showed the stars and the distant glow of a nearby nebula. Princess Zara moved to the window and stood silently for several minutes. It's beautiful, she said finally. On Valkyrie ships, we don't have many windows. We prefer to focus inward on duty and order rather than on the vastness of space. Don't you find space inspiring? Jake asked. All those worlds out there waiting to be explored? I do, she said quietly. But such thoughts are considered inappropriate for someone of my position. The heir to the empire should think about control and expansion, not wonder and exploration. There was something sad in her voice that made Jake look at her more carefully. For just a moment she seemed younger and less certain than her royal bearing suggested. Their conversations continued over the following days. Princess Zara began requesting clarification on human proposals that required private meetings. She suggested informal discussions about cultural exchange that could happen during evening hours when other delegates were resting. Jake found himself looking forward to his conversations. Princess Zara was highly intelligent and had clearly studied human history in great detail. She knew about Earth's wars and how different nations had eventually learned to work together. She understood human art and literature better than many humans he knew. I've been reading about your Second World War, she said during one evening meeting. Your species nearly destroyed itself but then chose cooperation over continued conflict. How did you make such a change? They were sitting in Jake's private office sharing a simple meal he had prepared. Princess Zara had expressed curiosity about human food, and he had offered to show her some basic dishes from Earth. Her guards waited outside in the corridor. It wasn't easy, Jake said. Many people died before we learned that we were stronger together than apart. Fear and pride made us fight when we should have talked. The Valkyrie have never learned this lesson, she said. We conquered our world through strength and have used the same approach among the stars. But I wonder sometimes if there might be a better way. Jake was surprised by her openness. You're heir to one of the most powerful empires in the galaxy. You could change things if you wanted to. Princess Zara shook her head. The old ways have deep roots. My uncle Lord Commander Keth leads the military council and believes that showing any weakness invites attack. Most of the noble houses agree with him. What do you believe? Jake asked. She was quiet for a long moment. I believe that an empire built only on fear will eventually fall. But changing thousands of years of tradition is not something one person can do alone. As the weeks passed, Jake began to feel something he had not expected. He was attracted to Princess Zara not just physically but intellectually and emotionally. She was thoughtful and curious with a vision for her people that went beyond conquest and control. When she smiled, which happened more often during their private talks, her entire face transformed from regal coldness to warm beauty. He was careful not to let his feelings show during formal negotiations. But in their private moments, he found himself sharing more personal stories about his own life. He told her about growing up on Mars colony, about his military service during the Centauri conflict, and about his dreams of a peaceful galaxy where all species could thrive. You carry a heavy burden, she said one evening. Being the voice of your people in a place where one wrong word could start a war? We all carry burdens, Jake replied. Some are just more visible than others. She looked at him with those deep, dark eyes, and he felt something pass between them that was more than diplomatic courtesy. Yes, she said softly, some burdens are indeed invisible. The breakthrough in their relationship came during the third week of negotiations. The formal talks had reached a stalemate over the question of military access through disputed systems. Human ships needed passage to reach their outer colonies, while Valkyrie forces wanted to prevent any armed vessels from crossing space. They claimed as their own, after a particularly difficult session that ended with Admiral Clark walking out in frustration, Jake found Princess Zara waiting in his office. She looked upset, and her usual composure was cracked. I have been lying to you, she said, without any greeting. Jake felt his stomach tighten. About what? About my telepathic abilities. I told you and your delegation that I would not use them during these talks out of respect for human privacy, but I've been using them in a different way. She moved closer to him, and Jake could see that she was struggling with something important. I have been shielding our conversations from other Valkyrie. When we talk privately, I create a mental barrier that prevents my own people from sensing what we discuss. Jake was stunned. Why would you do that? Isn't that dangerous for you? Very dangerous, she admitted. If my uncle or the other nobles discovered that I was hiding information from them, I could lose my position as heir or worse. But our conversations have become precious to me. I did not want to share them with anyone else. The admission hung in the air between them. Jake realized that Princess Zara had been taking enormous personal risks to spend time with him. She had been protecting their growing friendship and maybe something more from the scrutiny of her own people. Zara, he said, using her name without her title for the first time. She looked up at him, and he saw vulnerability there that she had never shown before. I know this complicates everything, she said, a Valkyrie princess and a human captain. It should be impossible. Maybe impossible things are the only ones worth trying, Jake said. She stepped closer to him until they were almost touching. In my culture, emotion is seen as weakness. Attachment to someone outside the Empire is seen as betrayal. But when I am with you, I feel more alive than I have ever felt before. Jake reached out and gently touched her face. Her skin was warm despite its pale blue color, and she leaned into his touch like someone who had been starved for gentle contact. I feel the same way, he said, but we both know how dangerous this is. I know, she whispered. But I also know that you have changed something inside me. You have shown me that there can be strength in compassion and wisdom in cooperation. My people need to learn these lessons, but I cannot teach them if I do not first understand them myself. They spent the rest of the evening talking about their feelings and the impossible situation they found themselves in. They were from different species with different cultures, and they were on opposite sides of a negotiation that could determine the fate of billions. But they were also two people who had found something rare and precious in each other. As Princess Zara prepared to leave, she turned back to him one more time. Tomorrow the formal talks will continue, and we will be diplomat and princes again. But tonight I wanted you to know that somewhere in the Valkyrie Empire there is now a voice that understands the human heart. She left him standing in his office with the weight of their secret pressing down on him like a physical thing. He was falling in love with her and she with him, but the galaxy itself seemed determined to keep them apart. The negotiations continued, but now Jake carried a burden that was both wonderful and terrible. He had found love in the most unlikely place, but he did not know if that love would save them all or destroy. The fourth week of negotiations brought unexpected progress as both sides found compromise on several minor issues. Jake watched Princess Zara work with growing admiration as she gradually shifted her delegation toward more reasonable positions. She was subtle about it, never directly opposing her advisors, but asking questions that led them to see problems with their hardline approach. Admiral Clark noticed the change too. Something has shifted in their position, she told Jake during a private meeting. Princess Zara seems more willing to consider our proposals than she was at the beginning. Jake nodded while trying to hide his own feelings about the reason for that change. His evening conversations with Zara had continued and deepened. She shared more about her upbringing in the Valkyrie court and her growing doubts about the Empire's methods. He told her about human struggles with prejudice and how Earth had slowly learned to value diversity over uniformity. "My people see difference as disorder," she said one night as they sat together in the observation lounge. "But you have shown me that difference can be strength. Your people have abilities that humans can barely imagine," Jake replied. "If we could combine Valkyrie telepathy with human adaptability, we might create something neither species could achieve alone," she smiled at that. "You always think in terms of cooperation. It is one of the things I love most about you." The word love hung between them like a bridge they were both afraid to cross. They had grown close over the past weeks, but neither had dared to speak the word out loud until now. "Zara," Jake said softly. "I know," she said. "It is foolish and impossible and could destroy everything we are trying to accomplish. But it is also real." Jake took her hand in his. Her fingers were longer than human fingers, but they fit perfectly with his own. "What happens when the negotiations end?" he asked. "I don't know," she admitted. "I will have to return to my people, and you will continue your work here. But perhaps we can find a way to meet again." Neither of them mentioned the larger problem that hung over their relationship. Even if they found ways to be together, Jake was human and mortal, while Zara would live for centuries. Their time together would be brief by Valkyrie standards, even if they had forever. The breakthrough in the formal negotiations came when Princess Zara proposed a joint exploration program that would allow both human and Valkyrie ships to survey disputed systems together. It was exactly the kind of creative solution Jake had hoped for, but he was careful not to show too much enthusiasm. When she presented it to both delegations, Admiral Clark was skeptical at first but began to see the advantages. "If we're exploring together, neither side can claim exclusive rights to what we find," she said. "And we both benefit from sharing the discoveries." The Valkyrie military advisors were less pleased. Lord Commander Keth, who had remained silent through most of the negotiations, finally spoke up. "Joint operations require trust," he said in his cold voice. "Trust must be earned over time, not granted freely to potential enemies." Princess Zara met her uncle's stare without backing down. "Perhaps the best way to build trust is to take risks together," she said. "Great achievements require courage." Jake noticed the tension between Zara and Keth during that exchange. The Lord Commander's black eyes seemed to look right through Jake, as if searching for something hidden. After the session ended, Keth remained behind while other Valkyrie delegates left the conference room that evening. Jake waited in his office for Princess Zara to arrive for their usual meeting. She was late, which was unusual for her. When she finally appeared, she looked shaken and worried. "What's wrong?" Jake asked immediately. She glanced around as if checking for listeners, even though she had already raised her mental shields. "My uncle is suspicious," she said. "He has been asking questions about how much time I spend in the human sections of the station." "What kind of questions?" "He wants to know why I need so many private meetings with you. He says that understanding human culture is useful, but spending hours alone with a human captain serves no diplomatic purpose." Jake felt a chill run down his spine. "What did you tell him?" "I said that you have unique insights into human decision-making and that understanding your perspective helps me predict how your delegation will respond to our proposals. It is partially true, but I don't think he believes it completely." They talked for another hour, but both of them were distracted by the growing danger. If Lord Commander Keth suspected that Princess Zara had feelings for Jake, it would destroy not just their relationship, but possibly the entire peace process. The crisis came 3 days later. Jake was in his office reviewing the latest draft of the peace treaty when Peter rushed in looking pale and frightened. "Captain, we have a problem," Peter said. "I was running a routine security check on the diplomatic communications and found something strange." He handed Jake a datapad showing encrypted message traffic between the Valkyrie ships. "I can't read the content, but the frequency and timing suggest they're planning something. The messages started right after yesterday's session, and they're still coming." Jake studied the patterns on the screen. The messages were flowing between Lord Commander Keth's ship and the other Valkyrie vessels, but not including Princess Zara's flagship. Whatever was being planned, she was being kept out of it. "Have you told Admiral Clark about this?" Jake asked. "Not yet. I wanted to bring it to you first since you're the station commander." Jake's mind raced through the possibilities. The most likely explanation was that Valkyrie hardliners were planning to sabotage the negotiations somehow. They might be preparing to make demands they knew humans would reject, or they could be planning something more direct. "Keep monitoring the traffic," Jake told Peter. "But don't share this information with anyone else yet. I need to think about how to handle this." That night, Princess Zara arrived at their meeting place looking more worried than Jake had ever seen her. She was breathing hard as if she had been running, and there was blood on her lower lip where she had been biting it. "Jake, we have to stop meeting like this," she said immediately. "My uncle suspects something and he's becoming dangerous." "What do you mean dangerous?" She sat down heavily and rubbed her temples as if fighting a headache. "He confronted me privately after today's session. He knows I've been shielding our conversations from the other Valkyrie. He demanded to know what we discussed that requires such secrecy." Jake felt ice in his stomach. "What did you tell him?" "I told him that I was protecting human negotiating strategies from the military council until I could properly analyze them. But he didn't believe me." She looked up at Jake with fear in her dark eyes. "He said that if I continue to hide information from my own people, he will consider it an act of treason." "Zara, you have to stop taking these risks for me." "It's too late for that," she said. "He's already suspicious, and pulling back now would only confirm his fears." She reached for Jake's hands. "But there's something else, something worse." She was quiet for a long moment as if gathering courage. "I used my abilities to listen in on a private conversation between Keth and his security chief. They're planning to end the negotiations dramatically." "What do you mean?" "They're going to stage an incident during tomorrow's treaty signing ceremony. They plan to make it look like humans have violated the diplomatic protocols. In the confusion that follows, they will claim that peace is impossible and demand immediate military action." Jake stared at her. "Are you certain about this?" "I heard them discussing the details. They've already prepared evidence that will make it appear that human intelligence has been monitoring Valkyrie private communications. They know that such a violation would give them reason to withdraw from the negotiations immediately." The pieces fell into place in Jake's mind. The encrypted messages Peter had detected were probably part of the setup. The Valkyrie were creating a false trail that would justify their actions when they revealed it. "There's more," Princess Zara continued. "Keth suspects that you are the source of information that has been helping me moderate our positions. He believes you have been manipulating me somehow." "What does that mean for you?" "It means that when they stage their incident tomorrow, they plan to arrest me for collaborating with human intelligence. Once I'm under arrest, my uncle can claim temporary authority over the delegation." Jake realized the full scope of the trap that was closing around them. Lord Commander Keth would destroy the peace process and eliminate Princess Zara as a rival for power in the Valkyrie Empire. And Jake would probably be accused of seducing a Valkyrie princess for intelligence purposes. "We have to warn Admiral Clark," Jake said. "If we can expose their plan before they act." Princess Zara shook her head. "They're monitoring all official communications now. Any warning would have to come through normal diplomatic channels, and Keth would know about it immediately." They sat in silence for several minutes as the weight of their situation pressed down on them. Everything they had worked for was about to be destroyed, and there seemed to be no way to prevent it. "There is one possibility," Princess Zara said finally. "But it would be extremely dangerous for both of us." "What is it?" "I could use an ancient Valkyrie technique to temporarily suppress my telepathic signature. It would make me invisible to other Valkyrie senses, but the process is painful and could cause permanent damage." Jake didn't understand. "Why would you want?" The mission to expose Lord Commander Keth's plot succeeded, but at a terrible cost. Princess Zara had used the ancient suppression technique to hide from her guards while she and Jake infiltrated the Valkyrie section of the station. the psychic. Strain had nearly killed her, leaving her unconscious and bleeding from her nose and ears. When they finally returned to Jake's quarters with the evidence they needed, the proof of Keth's conspiracy had been enough to prevent the staged incident and save the peace negotiations. Admiral Clark had been able to expose the planned deception before the treaty signing ceremony, and the other Valkyrie nobles had been forced to remove Keth from his position as military commander. The treaty was signed 3 days later, establishing the framework for peaceful cooperation between humans and the Valkyrie Empire, but the victory felt hollow to Jake as he sat beside Princess Zara's bed in the station medical bay. She had been unconscious for 2 days while human doctors worked with Valkyrie healers to repair the damage from the telepathic suppression. When she finally woke up, she seemed different, somehow more fragile and distant than before. "How do you feel?" Jake asked when her dark eyes finally focused on his face. "Like someone took apart my mind and put it back together wrong," she said with a weak smile. "But I'm alive and the peace treaty is signed, so I suppose it was worth it." Jake took her hand gently. "The doctors say you'll make a full recovery. It will just take time." She nodded but didn't look at him directly. "Jake, we need to talk about what happens now." "I know," he said. "Your ship leaves tomorrow, and we'll have to figure out how to maintain contact without arousing suspicion." Princess Zara was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice was barely above a whisper. "That's not what I meant." Something in her tone made Jake's stomach clench with sudden fear. "What do you mean?" She pulled her hand away from his and sat up slowly in the hospital bed. "I have something to tell you. Something I should have told you weeks ago, but couldn't find the courage." "Zara, what's wrong?" She looked at him then, and Jake saw something in her eyes that he had never seen before. It was guilt mixed with pain and something that might have been shame. "My interest in you was not entirely genuine from the beginning," she said. The words hit Jake like a physical blow. "What are you talking about?" Princess Zara took a shaky breath. 3 years ago, when you first arrived at Kepler Station Valkyrie, intelligence identified you as a rising leader among humans. They saw you as someone who might become a threat to our expansion plans if left unchecked. Jake stared at her, trying to process what she was saying. "I don't understand. I was assigned to study you," she continued. "To learn about human psychology through observing you. To find ways that the Empire might manipulate human decision-making in future negotiations." The room seemed to spin around Jake as the implications of her words sank in. "You're saying you were spying on me?" "Yes," she said simply. "My initial approach to you during the negotiations was carefully planned. My questions were designed to extract information about how humans think and make decisions. My apparent interest in human culture was part of a deliberate strategy to gain your trust." Jake stood up abruptly and walked to the window. His hands were shaking and he felt like he might be sick. Everything he had believed about their relationship was crumbling around him. "The telepathic shielding I claimed was to protect our conversations," Princess Zara continued relentlessly. "In reality, it was to prevent you from sensing my true intentions through emotional resonance. Some humans are sensitive to Valkyrie mental states, and I couldn't risk you discovering my deception." "So everything was a lie," Jake said without turning. "Around every conversation, every moment of closeness. All of it was fake." "Not all of it," she said desperately. "Jake, please look at me." He turned around and saw tears streaming down her pale blue cheeks. "Somewhere during our time together, my feelings became real. I genuinely fell in love with you and with the human ideals you represented. My warning about the assassination plot was my choice to betray my own mission, to save the man I had come to truly love." Jake felt like he was drowning. "How am I supposed to believe that? How am I supposed to know what was real and what was part of your assignment?" "Because I'm telling you now," she said. "Because I'm risking everything to be honest with you, even though it means losing you forever. You should have told me the truth from the beginning." "I tried to tell you many times," Princess Zara said. "But every time I started to speak the words, I saw how much you cared for me, and I couldn't bear to destroy that. I told myself that my feelings had changed, so the deception no longer mattered." Jake sat down heavily in the chair beside her bed. Do you have any idea what this does to me? I opened my heart to you. I shared things with you that I've never told anyone else. And all the time you were studying me like a laboratory specimen. I know, she whispered. I know how much I've hurt you, and I will regret it for the rest of my very long life. Why are you telling me this now? Jake asked. Why not just let me go on believing the lie? Princess Zara wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. Because you deserve the truth. And because I realized during our mission to stop Kef that I couldn't build a real future on a foundation of deception. If there was ever to be anything genuine between us, it had to start with honesty. Jake stared at the floor, trying to make sense of his emotions. Anger, pain, betrayal, and underneath it all, a love that refused to die even in the face of such devastating news. How long? He asked. How long were you supposed to study me? The original assignment was? Jake stood at the observation deck, watching the Valkyrie ships disappear into hyperspace. Princess Zara was gone, and with her went the most complicated relationship of his life. The pain in his chest felt like a physical wound, but underneath it was something else. Despite everything that had happened between them, he found himself hoping that she would find a way to change her empire from within. The weeks following the Valkyrie departure passed slowly. Jake threw himself into his work, managing the station and dealing with the steady stream of diplomats and traders who came seeking to build on the peace treaty. Admiral Clark had returned to Earth with news of the successful negotiations, and Jake had received commendations from the Terran Alliance leadership. But none of it felt important compared to the empty space that Princess Zara had left behind. Peter noticed his captain's mood and tried to cheer him up with reports of positive developments throughout human space. The treaty has opened up new trade routes, Peter said one morning. Colony ships are already planning expeditions to systems that were off limits before. That's good news, Jake replied without much enthusiasm. Captain, are you all right? You haven't seemed yourself since the Valkyrie left. Jake looked at his young assistant and wondered how much he should say. Peter was intelligent and discreet, but the truth about Jake's relationship with Princess Zara was too dangerous to share with anyone. Diplomatic work takes more out of you than people realize, Jake said finally. When you spend weeks trying to prevent a war, the success feels good, but the stress lingers. It wasn't entirely a lie. The negotiations had been exhausting, and the revelation about Princess Zara's deception had left Jake questioning his own judgment about people and relationships. How had he missed the signs that she was studying him? How had someone trained in diplomacy and psychology been so completely fooled by a beautiful alien princess? But even as he replayed their conversations in his memory, Jake found it hard to believe that all of her reactions had been calculated. The way she had laughed at his stories about Earth, the genuine curiosity she had shown about human customs, the vulnerability she had revealed when talking about her own upbringing. Some of it had to have been real. 3 months after the treaty signing, Jake received his first indication that Princess Zara was keeping her promise to work for change within the Valkyrie Empire. A routine intelligence briefing mentioned that the new Valkyrie leadership had announced reforms to their colonial administration system. Local populations in conquered territories would be given more autonomy and representation in imperial decisions. It's a small step, Admiral Clark said during a secure communication from Earth, but it suggests that moderate voices are gaining influence in their government. Jake nodded while trying to hide his personal interest in the news. Any word on who was driving these changes? Princess Zara, apparently. She's been appointed to head a new department for colonial affairs. The intelligence analyst thinks she's using her success in the negotiations with us as a platform to push for broader reforms. Jake felt a mixture of pride and sadness hearing this news. Pride that Zara was living up to her ideals and using her position to help others. Sadness that he wasn't there to share in her successes and support her through what must be difficult. Political battles. More news filtered in over the following months. Princess Zara had established exchange programs that allowed young Valkyrie to study in neutral territories and learn about other cultures. She had negotiated new trade agreements that treated alien species as partners rather than subjects. Most remarkably, she had convinced the Valkyrie Council to establish a joint research initiative with human scientists to study peaceful applications of telepathic abilities. Each report made Jake more certain that Zara's transformation during their time together had been genuine. She was becoming the leader he had seen glimpses of during their private conversations. But it also made him realize how impossible their relationship would have been even without the deception. She was reshaping an empire while he was managing a single space station. Their paths would never cross again in any meaningful way. The reminder of their fundamental differences came 6 months after the treaty, when Jake received a formal invitation to a diplomatic reception on the Valkyrie homeworld. Princess Zara was being officially recognized as heir apparent to the imperial throne, and representatives from all major powers were invited to attend the ceremony. Jake stared at the elegant invitation with its flowing Valkyrie script and official seals. He could attend as part of the human diplomatic mission, but seeing Zara in her role as future empress would only remind him of the gulf that separated their lives. He sent his regrets and recommended that Admiral Clark represent human interests at the ceremony, but even as he tried to put Princess Zara out of his thoughts, Jake found himself following news from Valkyrie space with growing interest. She had survived several political challenges from conservative nobles who opposed her reforms. She had negotiated a peaceful resolution to a rebellion in the outer territories that previous administrations would have crushed with military force. Most importantly, she had begun the slow process of transforming the Valkyrie Empire from a conquest-based civilization into something that could coexist peacefully with its neighbors. The personal message arrived almost a year after their last meeting. It came through official diplomatic channels, but Jake recognized the elegant handwriting immediately. Princess Zara had written it by hand rather than using electronic communication, and the letter bore her personal seal. Captain Morrison began. I hope this message finds you well, and that your important work at Kepler Station continues to prosper. I wanted you to know that the reforms we discussed during our time together are making progress throughout Valkyrie space. The ideas you shared about cooperation and mutual respect have found fertile ground among my people, especially the younger generation. Jake read the letter twice, trying to understand what she was really trying to tell him. The language was formal and diplomatic, but underneath it he sensed something more personal. I often think about our conversations and the lessons I learned about human nature during the treaty negotiations. Your insights into the power of trust and compromise have proven invaluable as I work to guide my people toward a better future. I wanted you to know that your influence continues to shape policy decisions that affect millions of lives. The letter went on to describe specific reforms and their positive effects, but Jake found himself focusing on the closing paragraph. I know that our professional relationship ended under difficult circumstances, and I do not expect or deserve forgiveness for the mistakes I made during that time. But I wanted you to know that meeting you changed the course of my life in ways I could never have imagined. The Valkyrie Empire is becoming something better than it was, and the transformation began with the human captain, who showed me that strength comes from lifting others up rather than holding them down. She had signed it simply Zara, without her title or formal designation. Jake set the letter down and walked to his office window. Outside, the stars wheeled in their ancient patterns, indifferent to the small dramas of mortal beings. Princess Zara was out there somewhere, reshaping her civilization while carrying the memory of their impossible love. He would remain at Kepler Station, serving as humanity's guardian in this corner of space, while carrying his own memories of what they had shared. The irony wasn't lost on him. Her original deception had been designed to understand and manipulate human psychology. Instead, it had resulted in a transformation that made the Valkyrie Empire less threatening to human expansion and more willing to cooperate with other species. The spy mission had succeeded beyond its creator's wildest dreams, but in the opposite way from what they had intended. Jake kept the letter in his desk drawer and occasionally read it when the loneliness of command became too heavy to bear alone. Each time he wondered what would have happened if Zara had been honest with him from the beginning. Would they have fallen in love anyway, or had the deception been necessary to break down the barriers? Between their very different worldviews, he would never know the answer to that question. But he did know that somewhere in the galaxy a princess had become an empress who ruled with wisdom instead of fear. And in quiet moments when he looked out at the stars, Jake allowed himself to believe that their love had been real enough to change the course of history. 2 years after the treaty signing, Kepler Station received its first delegation of young Velkari scholars participating in Princess Zara's cultural exchange program. Jake welcomed them personally and was struck by their openness and curiosity about human society. They asked thoughtful questions about democratic governance, peaceful conflict resolution, and the role of individual choice in human culture. One young Velkari named Kess lingered after the formal welcome ceremony. "Captain Morrison," he said in careful English, "I wanted to thank you personally for the example you set during the treaty negotiations." "I'm not sure what you mean," Jake replied. "Princess Zara often speaks of the human captain who showed her that different species could work together as equals. She says that meeting you convinced her that the old Velkari ways were not the only path forward for our people.